Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
I'll be in trouble back home. I told the wife I'd be in from work in 20 minutes.
All in somebody's history.
10,000 years. Cretins. Morons.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Riley, and it descended from the heavens.
This episode, a cactus with the ability to impersonate people really wants to get a D12 to play D&D with, as we discuss Meglos. But before we get into that, Julie's going to take a look at the mail. Over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Anthony. I'll be covering the mail for Shada. And just as a reminder, there was a lot of commentary on Shada, so I will not be able to read through everybody's or the length of which everyone has responded. So if you want to see more, please visit our Facebook post on that. Our friend Jamie Carlson says, I am not usually one for novelizations, but I learned about Shada through being given Gareth Roberts' novelization as a gift. It begins with the incredible first line. At the age of 5, Skagra decided emphatically that God did not exist. This revelation tends to make most people in the universe who have it react in one of two ways, with relief or with despair. Only Skagra responded to it by thinking, wait a second, that means there's a situation vacant.
Nice.
It's
That
amazing.
sounds very Douglas Adams. He got the vibe right.
And also contains the line, as Skagra is walking through campus, several of the primitives had even shouted words of social greeting to him, using untranslatable colloquialisms such as, Oi, discotheque, where are the sexolets? Yes, he was obviously passing for a native. It's fine.
Love it.
Dirk gently reused Professor Chronotis, except he's not a retired Time Lord, he's just an immortal time-traveling professor for no apparent reason at all. I love that book, but it doesn't make a lick of sense. To be honest, I think every college has a few professors who might be retired Time Lords. 9 out of 10 models of a modern theologian. Nathan Law says, I honestly don't think that the Tom Baker narrated version is that bad. I watched it over and over again when it first came out, and unlike others, I absolutely loved it and did not think it lives up to my expectations. Of course, I felt the same about Tomb of the Cybermen, so what do you know? I look askance at much of the animated content because, in my mind, a recreation of Missing Who should always strive to be as accurate as possible. When they make changes or put things in that definitely weren't the way originally intended or shown, I feel that is an overreach. So the narrated version is still my preferred version.
God, but the music on it, Nathan, the music.
It is what it is, you know. At the end of the day, I think this is fun and still stands head and shoulders above much of the season. I'm really curious how you guys will rate season 18 and its much darker tone and more high concept storytelling. Well, we're getting into that. Our friend, John Thomas Casey, this is a very, very much paraphrased version of all the content that we got from him, so apologies. This isn't a story I've spent a lot of time with, but I do have the early 90s video release somewhere with the Crazy Tom intro. I'd forgotten just how nuts that is. I never saw all the existing footage prior to that, but I'm glad Anthony mentioned the weird video compilation that was released in fan circles earlier because I was wondering about that. In defense of Claire, if I were to suddenly find myself in a TARDIS control room, playing with the controls is most likely exactly what I'd do. Probably get myself killed, but I just wouldn't be able to help myself. Seems she did all right, though, as she was contacted telepathically. Maybe. It's been a while since I watched this by not quite deceased Chronotis. Anyway, Alan Seiler says, like Tomb of the Cybermen, this one, being a missing story, had a monumental reputation as one of the greats. Also, like Tomb, when you finally do see it, you realize it's just pretty average. I object. Tomb of the Cybermen is amazing, and we're just going to disagree about this. It should have been epic. An ancient Gallifreyan artifact of unknown power, a mysterious alien seeking to possess that artifact, a Gallifreyan prison planet so secret that knowledge of it has been erased from the minds of the Time Lords, a legendary Time Lord with immense mental powers whose name is only spoken of in whispers, and who is held prisoner on that planet. It reads like an epic. Unfortunately, it's undermined a bit by no backstory or definition to the two main guest characters. This is especially true of Chronotis Salyaven. How did Salyaven escape from Shada? Do we really need to know that, Alan? Do we really? Why indeed was he sent to Shada in the first place? Why did he assume the identity of Chronotis? A lot of those I don't really think is necessary, but we can agree to disagree, Alan.
Very, very quickly before we move on, I had a thought, one of those kind of shower thoughts the other day, and I really regret not using the phrase misbehaving with Sally Avon when we recorded that episode.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Julie, please continue.
Thank you so much. He then says, how did he come to acquire his unique mind powers? There's so much about him we don't know. Both Dennis Carey and Christopher Neame are wonderful in the story, despite having characters with no depth at all. There are so many fantastic ideas in the script, but none of them seem to be developed too well. Plus, as Anthony said in your episode, too much of it reminds me of City of Death. I give it 6 phantasm spheres out of 10. I'll just disagree with you, Alan. Our friend, Kieran James Evans says, enjoyable but very odd in its reconstructed state. It is too long, though, and I agree a tight 4-parter could have been made and helped production timescales. With the various versions available in my mind, my score is ? Out of 10 are once and future story. Our friend Arl Gray says, hey watchers, still in the middle of this extra long episode, but Riley's comment about Grandpa Simpson telling a story inspired this, and I wanted to get it out in case I'm mind wiped by Skagret or something. There is a meme out there if you want to go see it. It's on Facebook, but it does have a picture of old Tom talking with Matt Smith's doctor saying, so I put on my 7-meter scarf, which was the style at the time. And we can take it from there. Austin D. Patterson says, you guys posting this reminded me I had an unwatched copy of Chada in my drawer. I watched it for the first time before listening to your review, and I gotta say, I liked it. It's different enough from the rest of season 17 to be intriguing, and the concept is executed in a really fun way. Yes, there's a lot of confusing padding, but the aesthetic of the story has all that Douglas Adams goodness to make up for it. The blend of animation and live action is not jarring at all, and I like how at one point the cast literally walks through doors into live action. This story would not only have made a great season 17 ending, but I think it would have also been great as Tom's regeneration story. Who knows what happened in a parallel universe? I give it 8 out of 10 lumps but no sugar. Citrine Dragonfly says, so glad you appreciated the glam perfection that is Skagra walking down the street in Cambridge. Easily one of the best outfits of the season. It absolutely is the best outfit of that season. Yes.
The hat made it.
Yes, the hat. I really enjoy Chada and would have loved for it to have been completed. Like Julie, I kept figuring out the reveals just before they showed up on screen. I wish Romana had a more active role in the story. I love Lala's Romana, but she is damseled way too often. 7 out of 10 sharp-dressed glams. And, last but not least, David Patty says, good podcast on Chada. It's always entertaining hearing you tear into something, but I was starting to feel bad for the 3 of you after a run of dubious serials. Good that you like this one. It's fun, but it's fun based on a reasonably solid script and some excellent performances. And it has Skagra camp as a row of tents and with a hat Troughton's doctor would die for. I forgot Troughton loved hats.
Yeah.
He did love hats.
I should like a hat like this.
Only thing I'd query is Riley, I think it was, saying that Skagra's a glam rocker. I mean, it's 1979. He's got a great big floating, glowing disco ball, and he dresses like the 4th BG.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
This guy's got a bad case of Saturday Night Fever. If you don't believe me, imagine him walking through Cambridge to the soundtrack of Staying Alive.
I need someone to make this edit and put it on YouTube.
Yes, please. One of our folks out there who's really good at the editing, that would be great. And thanks again. As usual, you made me laugh a lot. And this one gets 8. Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk, I'm going to suck your brains dry out of 10.
I'm obsessed. Yes.
And that, Anthony, is the mail. Back to you.
Thank you, Julie. And as a reminder to our listeners, we really do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions. And as you've just heard, we do try and read out as many as possible on the show, even if we do have to edit them a little. So please do get in touch. You can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. Additionally, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your favorite podcast platform. All right, heading behind the scenes on Meglos, and as we talked about last time, new producer John Nathan Turner and new script editor Christopher H. Bidmead wanted to bring new writing talent onto the show. One of the first people Bidmead contacted was an actor he knew named Andrew McCulloch. McCulloch had formed a writing partnership with a fellow thespian, John Flanagan, although their only televised work to date was an unsuccessful sitcom pilot called Bricks Without Straw. Promising start for them. In early February, Flanagan and McCulloch developed a story idea focusing on an exaggerated schism between science and religion, which was exploited by the villainous Meglos, whose true nature was inspired by a potted cactus sitting on McCulloch's kitchen table. No, I am sadly not making this up. Flanagan and McCulloch were soon commissioned to expand Meglos into a scene breakdown. Nathan Turner was unimpressed with an adventure that he saw as just standard Doctor Who fare, and Bidmead felt that the writers were expending too little effort on the plot and too much on the villain. Nevertheless, with little time to seek an alternative, that seems to be a theme in recent serials on Doctor Who, full scripts were requested. Since Flanagan and McCulloch wrote quickly, it was decided that The Golden Star, as it had now been renamed, would be the third story going into production for the season, coming after The Leisure Hive and State of Decay. Unlike the latter of those, The Golden Star would not feature incoming companion Adric, and so it would be the year's second broadcast adventure, coming immediately before his introduction in Full Circle. And I know Diana is pumped for that.
Adric.
During the writing process, several working titles were considered, including The Golden Pentangle, The Golden Pentagram, and The Last Solfataran, before the serial became The Last Zolthafuran. Several of these names reflected the evolving shape of the dodecahedron. It was originally a 5-sided object, thereby influencing the number of screens found on Zolthathura, rather than a 12-sided object made up of pentagons. Keen to inject some more science into the scripts, Bidmead suggested the inclusion of the chronic hysteresis, deriving the terminology from a loop-like phenomenon encountered in disciplines such as electromagnetism. Meanwhile, Flanagan and McCulloch jokingly devised the name Brotodak as an anagram of bad actor. As with Peter Moffat on State of Decay, more to come on that in a couple of episodes' time, Nathan Turner chose a former colleague from All Creatures Great and Small to direct The Lost Zolthathurun. This was Terence Dudley, whose friend Alvin Rakoff was married to a lady who we might be familiar with called Jacqueline Hill. She, of course, had played OG companion Barbara. Hill had paused her acting career to raise the couple's children, but was now eager to return to work, and Dudley offered to cast her as Lexa in the story, much to the approval of Nathan Turner, who wanted to give something to the show's long-time fans. In Flanagan and McCulloch's original storyline, Lexa had simply faded from the narrative once she ceased contributing to the plot. Bidmead suggested her act of self-sacrifice as a more dramatic end for the character. Joining Dudley's behind-the-scenes team, we have Angela Smith continuing her run as production unit manager. We have the return of the legendary June Hudson as costumer, whose work we've been seeing since season 16. As designer, we have Philip Lindley, whose work we previously saw on season 13's The Android Invasion. We also have 2 co-composers this story. Peter Howell returns for the second story running, and he is joined by Paddy Kingsland, who is a fellow member of the Radiophonic Workshop, and he had previously provided special sound on season 15's The Sunmakers, and he will continue to show up periodically through to season 21. Now, although Flanagan and McCulloch had hoped that many of the scenes on Zolthathura and in the Tigellan jungle would be achieved on location, Nathan Turner decided that their scripts provided an opportunity to save money by filming entirely in the studio. For a time, it was suggested that the Gaztacs might exhibit an East Asian appearance, with Bill Fraser and Frederick Treves as Gruger and Brotodak respectively, made up accordingly. But this notion was thankfully dropped. Ward's costume for The Last Zolthathurun was inspired by Francis Hodgson Burnett's novel Little Lord Fauntleroy. God help us. Meanwhile, Bidmead was required to significantly expand some of the scripts, particularly Part 3, which was found to be running 7 minutes short. And as such, they added the material with Romana leading the Gaztacs in a circle through the jungle. Pad, guys. When they were recording the serial, rather than taking the usual approach of recording set by set, Terence Dudley opted to mix and match material from all of the Tigellan locales on each of the 3 days. Tom Baker was now slowly recovering from the illness which had plagued him for weeks, but his long convalescence was still dampening his mood, and he apparently hated the latex facial prosthetics that he had to wear to make him look like a cactus. By this stage, the adventure became known once again by the writer's original choice, Meglos, which Nathan Turner loved because he actually wanted more varied and unusual story titles in the show. The broadcast of Meglos coincided with the BBC's announcement on October the 7th, 1980 that K9 would indeed be leaving Doctor Who after all. And despite Bidmead's efforts, all 4 episodes of Meglos were very short, with part 4 running for less than 20 minutes. As a result, it was scheduled in a shorter than usual time slot. Meanwhile, to celebrate the debut of the show's 18th season, popular waxworks museum Madame Tussauds had unveiled a display called the Doctor Who Experience. The exhibit included a waxwork of Tom Baker in costume as the 4th Doctor, and following the broadcast of Meglos, the display gained another one of the Doctor's Meglos doppelganger. And so Tom Baker became the first person ever to be represented by 2 different waxworks at the same time at Madame Tussauds. Pretty cool.
Huh.
Before we go ahead and discuss it, Riley has the short summary of this episode. Over to you, my friend.
Thank you. Some Doris Day aliens and a bunch of Qs from Star Trek Next Generation argue about the importance of a large piece of corporate art while aliens cosplaying as a Mongolian horde kidnap Stephen Merchant's dad to turn him into a human cactus. The Doctor and Romana get stuck in a time loop during all of this, and once again Romana gets separated and captured by a gang of extras from a Terry Gilliam film. The human cactus decides to mimic the Doctor and steal the rock. Of course, the Doctor sorts it all out with the small collateral damage of just an entire planet and the rock. It's okay, because next up the Doctor and Romana are headed to... oh shit, Gallifrey.
Thank you, Riley. All right, let's get in and talk to this. I don't know about you guys. My notes are actually quite short, this story. So, part 1, let's go.
I tried really hard on part 1, and then as I get to the different parts, the notes get shorter and shorter.
Yeah, that's the sense of how it pulls you in, right? Everyone has a lot of notes for the first part, but then when you get to that 3rd and 4th, all of a sudden you're typing just a few sentences, and yep, that says everything you need to know. But I'm not that hard on this one, actually. I'm middle of the road, I think. What was surprising to me is, once again, we have an episode where, for a good portion, the Doctor and Romana are sidelined from the story.
Yeah, They don't even really show up until part 2.
Right, they don't really do anything because they're caught in that time loop.
Why was it not just called a time loop? So this chronic hysteresis language, let's just, I don't know.
Which sounds like a gut problem.
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, sounds like you need to monitor your dietary intake.
Balance out your gut bacteria, yeah.
Clean out those pipes.
See, they just need a dose of Zolfathura. That prescription drug right there, I believe, really does solve that problem.
Yeah. All right. Had He-Man and the Masters of the Universe broadcast by this point? Was that a thing yet?
No, because I looked it up.
Oh.
You had the same thoughts?
Yes. He-Man debuted in like 1983.
Okay.
Wow. I wonder if they watched this, because those blonde wig people definitely look like He-Man.
Well, and not Zoroastra, but the other guy, the one in the purple that looked like Skeletor.
Yes.
That's why I looked it up, as I was like, is this man cosplaying as Skeletor? But then no, because it hadn't come out yet.
Skeletor is actually cosplaying as him.
That's the deep cut.
Oh, no.
That is the reversal you did not expect. Oh, boy.
I thought the blondies looked like the little lad who loves berries and cream.
Oh, yeah. It's just that little haircut that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about these different folks. I think I've mentioned this before, but I have a question. Where are all of these civilizations in which everyone wears different colors based on what rank they are or based on what group they're a part of? Because I have some questions. Because, yes, okay, you are in this crazy cult. So if you're not violent, then you wear the purples and the pinks. But if you are someone who's semi-military-esque, you're going to be wearing red. And if you're a scientist, you're going to be wearing white. And not only that, they're like quilt white jackets, because why not? I don't understand.
Love, love, love the quilting. That's some talent right there.
And it was funny. I was like, man, everyone's just wearing the different colors. And then you have the freelance people come in and you're like, okay, that's what I expect. They all kind of look the same, but everything is different. Good job.
I always think with those type of situations in science fiction where we have a stratified social order and people are keep the separation going based on what they wear. I guess they all go to different dry cleaners because they have very specific different things that they wear. It just emphasizes the separation within the society, I guess.
One dry cleaner that just specifies in quilts.
Yes.
And uses lots and lots of bleach because white.
But, I don't think we've had this on the show in a while. Like the classic separation. I'm thinking about the Sevatim and Natesh. That was the last time we had kind of a split like that, but that was more of a technology, like primitive split, and this is more of a science or faith split.
Yeah, it almost feels like you've got uniform. I mean, it is uniforms, so I guess the religious order have their equivalent of the monks' habits and so on and so forth, but it does feel kind of generic, bad 1980s sci-fi.
It just is that.
Cards on the table. Within part 1, I already thought this feels like it should be in season 17, but it's missing the humor. It's a season 17 story with the humor completely sucked out of it. You've got the terrible talking cactus when it's just on a table as a cactus. It's so bad.
Do we know, did they construct that, or did they just literally buy a cactus?
It was in someone's office.
Yeah. Just the most recent Pier 1 Imports purchase.
And Anthony, I will argue with you on this. You said it's without the humor. There's a lot of humor here. It's just not intentional.
Or funny.
Fair point.
I think it's hilarious seeing this businessman in such absurd surroundings, terrified.
Yeah, I wish they had leaned into that more. I was really disappointed that we weren't going to get this uppity businessman having to be crazy, but they just sidelined him.
Yeah, I would think at the end he would still be completely losing it because this is just too much to comprehend. But I guess on the hierarchy of needs, not being turned into a cactus is above like being surrounded by aliens and being on a planet. So I guess you handle that first before you start comprehending everything else.
I think one of two things. At the very end, and I know we're jumping ahead here, but he's just kind of chilling out in the TARDIS before they drop him off. And he's probably in there crying and rocking and just being like, this is terrible. This is all a bad dream. This is all a bad dream. And they just weren't going to show that. But I would also argue it doesn't help that every single one of these episodes was super short.
Yeah, did you see the runtime? I looked this up on Wikipedia. The runtime for episode 4, I'm not kidding. I believe it had it down as 17 minutes, 36 seconds.
Yes. Yes.
No, excuse me, 19
God.
minutes, 30 seconds, but still, not even 20 minutes.
I think some of that was recap.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
All right, so we've got the cactus, we've got the human who feels like he should kind of be like Arthur Dent in Hitchhikers. But again, it's missing the focus and it's missing the humor. And yeah, ridiculous aliens, bad special effects, synthy music. It does kind of feel like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but without the humor.
The CSO actually looked pretty decent.
At times.
Yeah.
At times, yeah.
Particularly in that scene when they're on the planet with the large screens and such.
I just found this so hard to care about. All right, so we end part 1 with Meglos taking the shape of the Doctor. Part 2, let's go. I'm done.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hey, here's something that I think is a compliment you can give this serial. And that is, I really do think that Baker did an excellent job of playing the mimic Doctor. There's a nice little bit of just playing the character slightly off. And I thought he did well with that.
Yeah, I thought he did well enough that, like, I legitimately was confused when we jumped to him being bad Doctor, because I was like, hold on, we were just in tummy problem lands, and now we're in a ship with the horrific Rosencrantz and Guildenstern characters. That I am horrified to even call them that, because I love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and I hated these two guys. But I was legitimately like confused, because I was like, I thought we were just stuck in a time loop and now the Doctor's on the ship, because they never explained how Meglos, like, does he have the Doctor's DNA? Like, how does he know what this man looks like?
Oh, thank God you noticed that, because I was wondering if I just was already so tuned out I wasn't paying enough attention.
That happened to me too.
I started the episode over. I was like, I'm watching this on a legitimate source, like this is an official like release. Like, did they cut something? What happened here?
Given the shorter running time, I think it's certain they did not cut something.
Right. Now that I know that they're padding it, give me like 4 seconds of just expository, hey, I turned into the Doctor.
It does, to me, very much feel like there was a moment with the production team where they went, oh shit, nothing's quite ready yet. Just put Meglos in. We'll deal with it when it happens. It's not ready yet, but let's just make it.
Where'd he get his clothes? How do you know that the Doctor changed his vibe? Where'd he get those threads?
Speaking of which, if I recall correctly, we didn't spend a huge amount of time, if any, talking about the new Doctor costume loss. time round.
Briefly.
Diana mentioned it just a little bit because she mentioned how much she dislikes it. Am I correct?
Correct.
Right.
I love it.
Really?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're wrong, but that's okay. I like you anyway.
I can be wrong occasionally. I'll allow it.
It's healthy.
I'm just meh about it. I don't like the change in the scarf.
Yeah.
Honestly, if we had gone for the full maroon but kept the OG scarf, I would be less perturbed. But the scarf is just so much of that character for me. It's the whimsy of it. I did like the green lining. The green lining was nice. I had never noticed that before, but still.
And that waistcoat. I love that waistcoat.
I love me a man in a waistcoat, so I get that.
I do like the shirt sleeves look for him. Yeah.
Mhm.
Take off the coat and the whole outside layer, like be an inside person, and it is a nice look.
While we're talking about threads, I, for the first time, found something that Romana 2 wore that I actually thought really worked.
Ooh.
Please
No.
don't tell me. Please don't tell me.
Please.
What? I'm talking about what she's wearing in part 2. Like that.
The
remember that
lacy,
little red,
weird
yeah.
thing? Oh, it's
Yeah.
awful.
But I mean, to me, it's a change because I feel like everything she's worn before that makes it feel like she has the decision making for costumes like that of the village people. It's not a certain style. It's almost like an occupation or a cosplay. Now I'm going to look like a student. Now I'm going to look like this. It's like, okay, finally something that doesn't feel like you're trying to hint at an occupation. It's just something fine that might have show character to it instead of just... Like I said, what was one of the ones she wore before? Like she was about to go equestrian riding? I mean...
Diana, do you think it's terrible?
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
thought she showed up. She popped her head out of those bad woods, and I thought she looked like a very poorly styled K-pop artist, which is a strong indictment because their stage costumes are sometimes horrific. And this was just overdone. There's too much. Like the shoes. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? We're really going to wear the like buckled silk heeled court shoe? No, it was too much.
I'm going to defer to the ladies on this and trust that the two of you actually understand women's fashion way better than I do. So if you say it's terrible, I'm going to nod and agree.
Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, boy.
I had some questions on exactly what was going on with Meglos because the going between Dr. Cactus Doctor, the human being inside of him, and all those things, it just, something seemed, at no point did I really feel like he should be Cactus Guy because I didn't think it was a combining of the two bodies. It felt a little, I don't know, something felt weird.
Yeah, they never went into, is it possession? Is it mind melding? Am I just adjusting my cells to match yours? Like, they went so much into, honestly, nothing. They didn't do the technobabble stuff. Honestly, the whole thing felt like it was the basic script that they never actually zhuzhed up and punched up.
Yeah, it feels incomplete.
And I find it interesting that they went with, he first had to possess a random human being to then look like the Doctor. Like, why couldn't he just immediately start looking like the Doctor?
Yeah.
And that's why it felt like it should be more possession. And if it's possession, there should be no reason he turns into a cactus person.
And if it's just going to be that, why did they need Mr. Accountant Man? Just take over Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
He probably would have won if he had taken over Dumber. Like, all Dumber wanted was a coat.
Right.
And he would have gotten the coat immediately.
Right. He would have gotten to wear the coat the whole show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very good point because if you look at the two options between the Dumb and Dumber pirates and an Earthling, I would say that one isn't any closer to the Doctor at a matter level or a genetic level than the other. So it makes no difference.
Yeah, it's badly scripted.
Yeah, that just doesn't work. You're right.
Badly plotted, badly scripted.
And then one of the other myriad of things is I was really frustrated by like Meglos stopped being a cactus or continued being a cactus, but inside of a person, but had a computer voice. And then when he got into the person and turned into a cactus person, he still had a computer voice.
Oh, yeah.
If you took over the person, wouldn't you have the person's voice? And then when he turned to the Doctor, he did have the Doctor's voice.
Yes, it's all bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just don't even know why we got that person in the first place, because he had like 2 lines and was hardly seen on screen. Bless his heart.
Also, there are a couple of things in part 2 I really like. One is Meglos using their religion to get what he wants, saying things like, I can enter the power room because I have the protection of Ty himself. Well, if that isn't damn prescient, I don't know what it is. I can do what I want because I have God's protection. Wow. That's on the nose. Also, carnivorous plants. Jesus Christ, that is cliche.
It was so superfluous to what was going on. And also, really, you can't be on the surface because of man-eating plants. They couldn't move, so just don't go by them. Because it didn't seem like they were completely overrun by those plants. It seemed like there was little pods of those plants. So, like, just don't go by them.
It seems like it's a situation where it's written backwards. It's like, and I am afraid this may have been the case, where, okay, Romana's captured by these pirates. How does she get away? Hey, why don't we make the planet full of carnivorous plants so then she can get them entangled in the plants and get away? You see what I mean? They're not writing to create a story. They're writing backwards in order to get themselves through things.
Fill time.
Yeah.
It's not well done.
Yeah, because Romana seemed like she got through it just fine with her razor, electronic, maybe taser, maybe shears. You know, if they had just developed some like weed whackers, they'd been fine. If you can get the dodecahedron to power your entire underground city, I'm sure it can design a thing that can cut through a plant.
Yeah. Just bring a combine through those things. Who knows, man? Those plants might be tasty.
Oh, right? You know, you could probably get some good teas out of those flowers.
At least.
All right, so let's wrap up part 2.
Yeah, and I had a question on this ending, so I'm going to help wrap this up because I have a question. So she's running around, she starts getting cornered by these guys, and she runs in one direction, 2 directions, 3 directions, they surround her, and then someone made the comment of, she's seen too much already? What has she seen? That you people exist? I don't understand.
I need to say something. Let me say what seems appropriate in a sci-fi setting. Good Lord.
It was so bad. Anyway, yes. Sorry, Anthony. I just was like, I don't understand this like closing comment that was made at the end of this episode.
Yep.
Very bad.
So Romana gets busted and Meglos has stolen the dodecahedron and Barbara wants the real doctor arrested for stealing it.
Poor
Okay,
Babs.
let's talk about part 3.
Part 3.
It was at this point I realized that I've only seen this story once or maybe twice before, and I realized very quickly why I've never come back to it.
Yeah, I wrote 2 notes for episode 3. One of them was that K9 would benefit from a solar panel.
Yeah.
I wish we got to explore more of the socio-religious context on this rather than Cactus and the D12 that he's now running around with.
Yeah, it sure took him a while to get out of there, didn't it?
Yeah.
So Romana's captured, and she does the nose in the air, I'm better than you are, Romana, which I did appreciate that. That was actually a little bit more reminiscent of Romana 1 than I've been used to. So I appreciated that. And then she was coming up with the reasonings about the planet. It spun in a different direction than normal and all that other things. That sounded very doctor. And I think she's learned a couple things from the doctor of just, if you keep spouting bullshit that sounds good, you'll be able to get yourself out of situations.
The writers should have taken that on board.
I was going to say, that's how I navigate life.
This would have been a much better episode if they had just paid attention to what they wrote for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess not a lot happens here.
Well, there was one part I was a bit confused with, and forgive me, like I said, we all started drifting off into space while watching these last 2 episodes of the serial. But when Cactus Doctor corners one of our, like I said, Doris Day aliens and kind of pulls her into the corner, is there a hypnotism going? I mean, I don't understand how he was able to, pull her in or lure her in. There didn't seem there was much of a fight. And then her reaction to him showing the dodecahedron in his hand also didn't seem to fit. I guess she had such respect for it, to see it shrunk down was horrifying. I'm reaching on these reactions, and that scene just felt very strange.
I remember thinking, wow, this is the one time I've been watching this show where I think it would be appropriate for the woman to scream.
Yeah, that would work.
Like, shout something, especially because she was being all like little detective, kind of Nancy Drewing it around. And then the bad guy comes out with his mask off, basically, and says, ta-da! And she's like, oh, well, hi.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, I agree.
I found it weird too because her and Bab's character, they were on the breakthrough of having them work together and bridging the gap between science and religion, and then it just like quickly deteriorated, and that's not the direction that they went. And I was like, man, if they had just decided, you know what, let's have these two women pair up and actually like be amazing, that would be so great. No, they didn't do that, and I was very disappointed in that. And I think they did a disservice to both their characters, because then they came out just looking a little bit weaker than they should have been.
Yeah, there was no real gray area in this story. Everything was either you're real scientific or you're real religious. And the second that somebody started bending even a little bit, they just basically like cut that thought process off, which I was disappointed in, because that's what makes these kinds of things interesting, is that you have people that are in the middle, not just, let's worship the dodecahedron, or this is a machine. Because like, where'd it come from? Nobody still explained that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question I had. It was not very well explained, and it's a power source, and then also what were they, the Deons? They thought of it as a god. Also, didn't we have Deons in the Armageddon Factor? Never mind. Yeah, it's not well explained, and Lexa / Barbara thinks that the dodecahedron was taken by the god, being Tai. I agree, the religious zealotry, although I have met people who are highly religious and now completely reject science, but let's not get into the social religious direction of large swathes of the USA right now.
I get the frustration, because I do get frustrated as a practicing Christian, where it's just like, I get delving into some of the bit of the crazy, but could we one time have an episode that just has normal religious people?
Yeah, I think that's where my issue always is that it's always like the scientist who's like, oh, well, I'm, going to be courteous towards these religious people. And then the religious people are always like, rah, burn it with fire. And I just wish that like sometimes that they would show the fact that there are people of faith that also think about things sometimes. And it made them really just a brainwashed cult instead of a system of faith.
Well, it's very clear that with how much they turned on a dime in this story, that, let's face it, even if Meglos didn't show up to steal their D12, this was a culture on the way of having a conflict anyway. It's like they were already in that direction.
Yeah.
It was going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yep. Honestly, I think this is where I really stopped caring. By the time they've captured the Doctor and they're about to execute him by burning ropes to drop a giant stone on him, we've seen this before. That was in Underworld, I think.
Yeah, it was Underworld. You're right.
That's our cliffhanger. It's a huge cliche. Part 4.
But, one thing that I will say, there are some elements here. I am going to bring up the good bits. The Sith definitely reverted back to being not good in this serial, but I did like the elements in part 3 where the synth had the chanting going on. I think we're just big fans of chanting. I don't know. I really enjoyed that element of the music. And I also really did enjoy Babs playing Lexa, and the whole, and I said at the beginning of our recording where she goes, and it descended from the heavens. It reminded me of the Oprah Winfrey, and you get a car, and you get a car. It was the exact same delivery, and I do enjoy that bit of over-the-topness. That makes it fun. Like I said, I agree with everyone. This is not strong, but I do think there are little things we can pull out of it that are enjoyable on its own. It just gets to be a bit of a slog.
I decided my headcanon through the episode for Babs was that this was the alternate storyline to if she had maintained her priesthoodness in the Aztecs.
Ooh, I love that.
And that was just how I decided to watch this, which means I was very disappointed when they gave her a very poorly constructed death scene.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, oh yeah, she needs to die.
Can you believe they were just going to kind of have her fade out of the storyline and you just never find out where she went? I'm not sure the death scene is much better, but at least you get some kind of finality on her. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know.
Next part.
Yeah, let's bring
4.
this. Yeah, let's bring this big old rock back to the screens.
I mean, that planet, I was just thinking of it as the Dune planet, and
right.
This is like an attempt at Hodorowski's Dune.
So first off, I do want to mention that recap was 3 minutes long. 3 minutes.
In an episode that only runs, including the recap, at 19 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes, it's so bad. I can't.
I'm going to promise this season does get better from here. I'm gonna go on the record with that. It does get better, guys, I promise.
Well, I mean, we have our classic doppelganger situation that has been done not just in science fiction, in horror, in almost every genre has had the who's who, is that the real so-and-so? And we do it, and it plays a little bit differently than the typical situation where it always will end up being someone holding a gun and like, no, you shoot him, no, shoot him. And we didn't have that scene. So I'll give them credit for that.
Thankfully.
They didn't go in that direction that we've seen a million times before.
Yeah, I was afraid of that moment when Romana rolled up on the prison and they were both in there. And I was like, oh my God, here's the rest of the story, is who's the witch doctor?
Yeah.
But fortunately, it was one of those moments where Baker was good enough and they leaned into the fact that he was doing a good enough job as the doctor and Cactus Doctor that she could look at them and be like, oh, you have a mean face. You can't be the doctor.
You know, when he saw the script, Baker must have been so excited to see that he had a dialogue scene just between himself.
Yes, absolutely.
We once described John Pertwee as the Shatner of Doctor Who, but I think we now know the real Shatner of Doctor Who.
I also love when he's running around and the real doctor sees that the other one has his jacket off and he's just like, well, okay, it's shirt sleeves then, and takes off his coat. Because they could have very easily just left him in the jacket and it would have been super, super obvious. And it at least fools some people for a little bit of time. And I thought that was well done. One of the few things. But then when Cactus Guy decides to escape, he becomes a deflated cactus that just crawls on the floor until he gets back to his pot so that he could like reestablish himself as a real cactus. Is that what happened?
Yeah, he turned into a sea cucumber.
Very quickly on the Doctor and Meglos imitating each other, one of the few moments of humor that actually worked for me was when the Doctor sees Meglos get punched in the stomach and he says, nasty, that could have been me. And then the two ruffians punch the Doctor in the stomach. To me, that was at least vaguely funny.
That's such a damning indictment of this story.
Yeah.
Highlight, vague humor.
But towards the end, yes, we get the sea cucumber. It's so dumb.
It's so bad.
Pretty good effect, though. That's kind of slugging its way across the floor. It looks okay.
It fully gave me gross sea cucumber vibes, which is, I don't feel like, honestly, an easy thing to do with special effects because they're gross little dudes.
So my question, though, was, is everyone just going to sit there and watch it? Like,
Yes, apparently so.
No one is going to stomp on it. And, you know, because like pop him and he'll be gone.
Yeah. Pour some salt on them or something.
They didn't want it on their shoes. Yeah. Okay.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. So yeah, we get to the end, and apparently Gallifrey wants the Doctor and Romana back. We're going to drop the Earthling back home first, but he's apparently going to be in trouble with the wife. Ha 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 ha.
Oh boy.
Chortle.
And that's the end of the story. All right. I guess we need to rate this one.
Whoa, what about counts?
Well, yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, okay.
Camp count.
Actually, I don't think there is one really. The biggest you could give is maybe some of the costume. Maybe.
We can give a point for the costumes.
Maybe.
I think there was an attempt with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but it just didn't hit correctly.
We can go with 1 point on the camp count. Anyone notice any I'll explain laters?
Nope.
Sure wish they would have.
There were no quarries in this, so 0 on quarry. Did we get any jelly babies?
I do not recall.
All right, well, this season is not doing well for our metrics. Okay, well, I have the pleasure of being the one who gets to do the first rating on this, and this was a shit show. Devoid of humor, full of cliches. I checked out basically after part 1, and even then it was close. As I said, it kind of feels like Hitchhikers, but without the humor. I struggled to care about any of the characters. I think Jacqueline Hill was the one benefit of this story because she's still fantastic. She was by far the best actor on screen at any time. Almost 20 years after we last, 15 years after we last saw her, I guess. She's still beautiful. She's still really good. Good for her. Nice to see her. But otherwise, I'm going to be honest, unless I ever do another full show watch through, I'm probably never going to watch this one again. I think for me, this is 2 time loops that are not called time loops out of 10. Diana, you're up next.
So we're honestly speechless. I don't have words, which is problematic for a podcast. It was bad. I mean, it was bad. I went into it not remembering that for some reason, I feel like people talk about Meglos and I couldn't remember the context. And now I think it's probably because it's bad. Jacqueline Hill was lovely. I was tired of Dumb and Dumber after episode 1. Nothing made sense. It was rushed. The Doctor didn't do anything. If he's not going to do anything, he has to at least be funny, and he wasn't. So I give this 2 critical fails out of 20. Because it's, a dice.
So does that make it a 1 out of 10?
Yeah, it's a critical fail. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a nat 1.
All right, Julie, you're next.
I mean, everyone's been saying what we've been saying. It's bad. Really not anything redeeming. They sidelined K9 yet again. They have the worst side characters that I've seen in a long time. I get a little bit tired of seeing the crazy religious zealots. I understand why it's used, but I get a little tired sometimes. And nothing kept my interest the entire time. So I am going to give it 1.5 talking sea cucumbers out of 10.
Wow. Riley, where's your head at?
Is it good? No. But I don't think it is as terrible as everyone is saying. And I'm saying that because it's silly. It is bizarre. It's definitely not something that you see every day. I appreciate that element of it. It's just kind of weird with unfortunately, some cliches thrown in the back, but I don't know. The image of the Doctor having cactus skin is interesting to me. Having Babs back was interesting, and I enjoyed the performance. I think she really hammed it up in a good way, and the CSO work was better. So, I'm going to come in and say 3.5 severely mentally disordered businessmen caused by learning the eldritch truth of the universe out of 10.
Well, that gives us a story average of 2 out of 10, meaning that our story average is equal to The Creature from the Pit, which I think makes those 2 our joint 2nd worst rated stories of all time, after, of course, The Space Pirates. Wow. Well, we've reached the end of this episode. We'll be back next time when we head back to Gallifrey, maybe, in Full Circle, where we'll also meet new companion Adric. But
Adric.
But in the meantime, thank you so very much for listening. And of course, as always, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Riley Schreck, Julie Philippak, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Cosplaying as Skeletor, was recorded on Sunday, the 10th of November 2024. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at @Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, actually, I've got nothing on this one. Carry on. Adric.